first thing that we do is, when I came to this town a couple years ago, I met with Lisa Harless, Carrie Barnhart, and some of those bankers. And I actually bank here. And I recommend you do too, and I recommend that you work with them. I see people every day that need money or looking for an advance or trying to stabilize their cash flow. And if they qualify for one of those programs, I send them that way. And if they need something else or if they don't qualify, they're sure to tell people about what we do. And that's how we built this business. So real quick on Sound Royalties, we're a specialty finance firm. Breaking the plane too much. We're an innovative company. We provide non-credit based advances for songwriters, artists, producers, labels. We're money for the music industry. We extend anywhere from $5,000, so we'll work with just about everybody. If you've got $3,000 to $5,000 in income coming in royalties, we'll find a way to work with you and try to help you, all the way up to, we won't give any person more than $10 million. It destabilizes the blocks that we're doing and the things that we're doing. And we pay referral fees, so that's the biggest way that we're spreading around is through referral fees. So myth number one, let's jump into that. You need a publisher or PRO to get any sort of advance. There was a survey done about 7,000 writers, and about 70 to 80% of them had no idea that there were other options available to them. You can go to your traditional bank. There are private financial institutions that will give you advances, and there's benefits to that. There's great benefits in taking it from your PRO, and there's benefits to working with private financial institutions. And so know what the players are out there, what they do, what their end goal is, and know that there's other options, and kind of weigh your options, rather than just call the PRO time and time again, and sometimes you may not get the answer you're looking for, or may not get the help that you're looking for. The next one, you need good credit, okay? If you're gonna work with a traditional bank, it helps, okay? You have to show income, as they mentioned, you have to show good credit. There are private financial institutions that provide funding that don't necessarily look at that. And there's many out there that provide non-credit based advances. So don't count yourself out, and don't expect it to be extreme in the other spectrum. It's how are they rating what you have and grading it. All that means if it's non-credit based is that they're not using your credit to grade it. But there's other ways to grade it that can give you a great rating and eligible for great financing and funding. This is why I got into this business. I came from a high-tech background and other things, and I started funding the entertainment community in 2003 because I had some friends that sold their copyrights. And I started looking at the entertainment community, and my goal was to come into the music space directly. I'm a firm believer, and people hear me, and Dope and I talked about this a few years ago, that you should never sell your copyrights. And my mom told me there's no absolutes. So sure, if you feel that you're not going to work the music anymore, it's going to fall off the face of the earth in the next short period, and you can lay it off on somebody for a 5 or 6 multiple, well, God bless you. It's not going to be me, because I don't believe in buying them. But I also think that it's 99.9% of the work that a songwriter does, you'll never see a penny from it, and the world probably won't hear it. But it's a piece of their soul, and that one lightning in a bottle that sparks out that the world gets to hear, then that's a piece of you. That's your soul, your blood, your sweat, and your tears. And you're going to sell that may pay for the next 35 plus years after the death of the last songwriter. Maybe use it as collateral, the income stream, but I don't believe you should ever give it up. And one of the things I like to share with people, I've been doing specialty finance since 2003. I personally own 0 copyrights. My businesses own 0 copyrights. And there are people out there that the bank is in it to provide credit-based funding to help you, whether it's your house, whether it's your mortgage, whether it's a car. And when the bank gives you a loan for your car, they don't want to own the car, right? And then there's other players out there that are more like a pawn shop. And they'll buy what you have, or they'll give you a loan or an advance. But in the end, they probably would prefer if they end up owning it. So when you're talking to a financial institution, understand, are they more like a bank model? Are they providing funding and financing, and I can see what it's going to cost me up front? I know what I'm in for. Maybe that's better for you. Maybe the pawn shop model is better for you, and that's okay too. But know what the business's end goal is. Do they buy copyrights? Is that something that they're interested in doing with you? And is that motivating some of the things they're doing with you? This is another thing that you should really look at. Is a lot of people think that when you take an advance, you don't see another penny until you're recouped. And there are programs out there with a lot of institutions that, they only work with some of the income stream. And so we see, and I know some other folks see, a lot of people that say, well, I like what you're doing, but I'm unrecouped with Sony, or I'm unrecouped with my PRO. And so, I'll let you know when I can get help. And a lot of times, for people like that, they can restructure what they have. They can take an advance now that pays off the existing advance, maybe get a little bit more money, and then start their income stream again. And so that's something to understand, that even if you aren't recouped, a lot of people, whether it's the banks, whether it's us, or can still help you and restructure what you're in and maybe put you in a better deal. And so don't count yourself out if you aren't recouped. Again, we touched on this real quick. It's count yourself out if it's too small. There's people in it for a passion, and whether it probably costs more to process it than it does to give you $5,000. There are people out there that'll be happy to do something for $5,000 because they believe in music and believe in what you're trying to do. You're screwed if your song isn't a hit, and that I get a lot of. Sure, if you have a hit, it's easy to do the math to figure out what it's doing. But you could have a sync. I've seen door slams that generate a lot of revenue in different movies. I've seen long streams of things that barely charted, but they still pay, and they're steady, and they're great because So just because you're not the #1 hit or the chart doesn't mean that you don't have something that you might be able to use as collateral to stabilize your income flow, because we all know the money goes like this. And if you can work with the peaks to level off some of the lows and stabilize things, it enables you to get a little more breathing room and do what you guys do best, which is create music. We talked about this, if you're in an advance, you can still restructure it. If you're in an advance, people get nervous about looking at options because they think, God bless you, by the way. If you're in an advance, people get nervous about looking at things because they're afraid the other co-writers and things will know. Absolutely not. It's strictly private and confidential, and you're only working with your stream. Even if you own 2% of a song, nobody else will know about it. It's strictly private and confidential. This is a big one. We talked about the pawn shop model. We talked about the traditional bank model. A lot of people think that non-credit based advances can get quite expensive and are predatory. And that's just not the case. I have a relationship with Lisa Harless and Carrie Barnhart, who was here tonight, and they were one of the first people that we talked to when we initially came to town, because we filled a void. And yes, some of the things we do are very risky, but some aren't. And so to give you an idea, people say, well, what does funding typically start at for non-credit based advances? Well, you're looking for 25 grand, it's $695 on a 4% advance rate. Practically traditional banking. So it gives you an idea of options are available. And then, it'll affect your earnings. No. When you work with your income stream only as collateral, it's not changing the publisher you're working with. It's not changing the PRO you're working with. It's not, if you can just work with your Sound Exchange, you can just work with your BMI, ASCAP, or CSAC, you can just work with your Cobalt or Sony or your TuneCore income or your YouTube. you still work with those organizations. It's just using that as collateral, and the money's still being paid and worked, and so whoever you've chosen to work with to be your champion is still your champion. This is a fun one because everybody knows, and it's a secret that nobody wants to, it's the gorilla in the room that nobody wants to talk about, and they do sometimes, but there are so many different streams that it's so darn confusing. It would be nice if it could be a little more transparent. But we see all the time when we work with someone, we analyze the royalty streams and we find holes. You know, we had one guy that had 70 syncs in a movie, and we looked at the stream and called him and said, listen, you're getting paid for 36 from GEMA. I was like, what does that mean? I said, well, that means the movie's playing, but you're not getting paid on 34 of them, whether they're not registered properly or whatever it may be. We also find the producer that's not collecting because he didn't do letters of directions and is not collecting all that he should. And we, pointed out to him, it's hard to pinpoint a total number, but to give you an idea, last year alone, we found from several of our artists, and it's spread into several others that were not artists, but we found about $8.5 million for about 400 artists. That was just going undistributed. It's out there, so work with your financial partners to look at your streams and understand what they are, because they're used to seeing these streams every day. And so they can say, well, wait a second, you're not collecting this, or when my computer system analyzed your streams, I see that in this country you're not being paid at all, or whatever it may be. And there's companies out there that specialize in it. We're not one of them. But we can point you to those. And if you're working with traditional financial institutions like us and others, they'll take a glance at it and they can sometimes point out that, hey, you should be looking at this, you're missing this. This is a great story. There was an article 2 weeks ago about a top songwriters. Some of the songs she wrote for Fifth Harmony, Worth It, Pitbull, Timber, and she talked about, and she gave a great story about how she has a great relationship with her publisher. She's got a great relationship with her PRO, but she had just gotten married. She was trying to build a house, and she wanted to make a run for it in her own right, and she wanted to be an artist in her own right. And she really didn't have the breathing room to do it. And this is, I'd look up the article, Google her name, and you'll see there's reasons that people take advances. And there's a lot of different options. It's not always that, hey, I need money, I'm broke. It could be to fund a project. It could be to make a run to be an artist yourself. It could be to buy a house, a car, whatever it may be. You can go to the next one. So about me, and I'll wrap it up. I started out in the music business as in my early years. That was my goal, and that was where I headed. And it didn't take long for me to figure out that music was my first love. It just wasn't my first language. So I could hear that I could condition myself to play just about anything, but I couldn't make those instruments speak. And so I went off into the high-tech world, did some software companies, had a lot of fun, did that kind of stuff, but I always missed something. And I started funding music stuff as a passion project, and it grew into a business. And that's what's brought me full circle. And now I'm in the music business exclusively. And you can look us up and find more about us, but we're about 100 employees, backed with 18 billion in assets under management. It's a traditional private financial institution geared to help out the music industry.